Good morning. Good afternoon. It's 12:03 here in LA. Great to be learning with you on a Monday. Special time. Thank you for being so understanding this week. 5-day release of Guns N' Moses is happening right now. We're doing a Q&A tonight after the 7 o'clock performance at the Regal Sherman Oaks Galleria, causing us to have this class at this time. Tomorrow, Tuesday, regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific, but that's the only one this week. Because of these other Q&As, we'll be in Costa Mesa. I can't remember if that's a Regal, Mesa Point, something like that. We'll put that on the Facebook page and on our Instagram. If you could put that in the comments, just look, it's the one in Costa Mesa. 7 o'clock show on Wednesday, and then we're at the Regal Edwards Valencia in Santa Clarita on Thursday. So today's at noon. Tomorrow is just regular time, Tuesday 6 p.m. Pacific. Wednesday would have been noon, but has to be even a different time than that, 11 a.m., because we need to go attend the arraignment of the production accountant who embezzled from us on the movie and who is finally being brought to justice. I don't know if I've ever shared that story. I did share it on our Instagram, but maybe not with the members of our class. Terrible thing. We got robbed during production on our movie. The production accountant stole... Oh, let me light up the darkness here. Stole the basically the post-production funds of the movie. It was a disaster. We had to go raise more money in order to finish the movie. We turned this guy in. Turns out he'd done it to 5 other films who hadn't turned him in because he was using the proceeds from the next movie to pay the previous one. I don't think the people, knew exactly what he was doing, but he said, yeah, I'll get you the money. And they didn't turn him in. As soon as we realized we've been robbed, I said, we're turning him in. It was just awful, and it was a 2-year investigation. And finally, this guy is getting arraigned, and I want to be there at the... he was indicted, and now he's getting arraigned, coming before the judge. So we need to be there on Wednesday, and that's why Wednesday's class will be at 11 a.m. Thursday, the regular... non-6 p.m. time, like Fridays. So Thursday and Friday will be at noon Pacific. And we'll put that whole schedule on the Facebook page. Last night, we were at AMC Universal. Wonderful Q&A, packed house. People had wonderful questions, and they just loved the movie. We've really been hearing lots of messages and comments from all over the country. People are seeing it everywhere, absolutely loving the movie. We're so grateful. It means so much to us. It's absolutely a word-of-mouth effort. If you've seen it, as Nina says, you're deputized. Please get the word out. The fact that a movie about Jews defending themselves, Jews arming themselves so that they can defend themselves, that is off-narrative in this climate, probably not surprising, but it is the fact. And therefore, as a blackout, an embargo by legacy media critics reviewing the movie, a movie like ours with our level of stars, production value, timeliness, ought to have hundreds of reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. It only has 10. We have received a large number of very positive reviews in outlets that Rotten Tomatoes won't run, again, off narrative. But really, the reason that we're in theaters again, that Fathom is doing this release, is because the word of mouth is so strong. We do have an audience score of 96 on Rotten Tomatoes. People love the movie. It's worth seeing on the big screen. So please, text and email the link, gunsandmosesmovie.com, to your friends everywhere in the country and say, go see this movie while it's in theaters, because that chance ends Thursday. It's just on until Thursday. 5 nights only, and last night was the first night. One last thing. I just shared a video on our Instagram, excuse me, at Accidental Talmudist and Guns N' Moses movie about a real life Rabbi Mo. There was a terrorist attack early this morning in Jerusalem in Ramot Junction. Terrorists went on a bus, opened fire at people's heads. 6 Jews were murdered this morning. Terrible, and it would have been worse, but a brave yeshiva student, religious Jew, who had inherited a gun from his grandfather, ran toward the danger. And you can see, I mean, it's a distant camera. It's certainly not graphic, but you can see that lone figure heading toward the danger when everyone else is moving away. And he boarded that bus, and he emptied his magazine into the terrorists, and he stopped them from killing and hurting more people. May God bless him. All those who survived the attack, may they have a complete and speedy recovery. Those who were murdered, may God comfort and strengthen their families in this awful time. Thank God those terrorists were neutralized and brought to justice. And may all who attack innocent life and who attack the Jewish people, these terrorists who have this bloodlust and hatred and want us dead, and then a complicit media and fools around the world calling people who board a bus and kill innocent civilians, women and children, calling these people freedom fighters, resistance fighters. Please, they're scum. They're animals. They're the worst form of life. They're just murdering savages, and they should all meet the end that they richly deserve. And please God, this level of hatred should be outweighed by people who can see the truth and who are sensible and who read their news from multiple sources and develop truth-based, reason-based attitudes. Let us pray that the world gets wiser and kinder and more loving. And let us say, Amen. Okay, our daf today is page 6 here in Tractate Horayos, the 20th volume of the Talmud. Today, God willing, we'll complete our discussion of Mishna number 1 in chapter 1, and with it, chapter 1, and we'll move into chapter 2, generally speaking, the laws of the special offering that is brought when the court makes an erroneous ruling and people rely on it. We picked this up near the bottom of page 5b. It is taught in a Baraisa that Rabbi Shimon says, what is the meaning when the verse states, and a second young bull shall you take as a sin offering in Numbers 8:8? So in the context of the purification of the Levites in the aftermath of the sin of the golden calf, if this is written to teach that they are two, i.e. that there is an additional bull sacrificed, isn't already stated, and sacrifice the one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering unto the Lord in Numbers 8:12. So rather, one might have thought that the sin offering that is sacrificed for the Levites shall be eaten like other sin offerings. And to counter this, the verse states, and a second bull, to underscore that it is second to the burnt offering and similar to it. Just a general note, when the temple was standing and offerings are brought, God willing they will be soon with the coming of Mashiach and the rebuilding of the third temple. So a sin offering is brought for unwitting transgression of a prohibition, resulting in a sin. Then you can bring a sin offering. Most of that offering is, slaughtered properly and then goes up in smoke on the altar as a pleasing aroma to Hashem, because we did his will. That's why it's pleasing, according to Rashi. And some of that animal is eaten by priests, by Kohanim in the temple. Only they can eat the edible parts of a sin offering, a chatas. The burnt offering, the ola, sometimes called the elevation offering, which, by the way, can be brought also by non-Jews, is completely consumed on the altar. All of it goes up in smoke as a pleasing aroma to Hashem. And then we have the peace offering, for example, festival offering, where some of its blood is sprinkled on the altar. And I think some parts are burned on the altar, but the most of it is eaten by the people who brought it. Okay, but the burnt offering is entirely consumed by the altar, and that's what this is teaching you in that incident. Just as a burnt offering is not eaten, so too this particular sin offering brought in the wake of the golden calf was not eaten. Now we're on page 6a. And similarly, Rabbi Yosei said that it is stated with regard to those who returned to Zion from Babylonia in the days of Ezra, the beginning of the Second Temple period, that the children of the captivity who came out of exile sacrificed burnt offerings to the God of Israel, 12 bulls for all Israel, 96 rams, 77 lambs, 12 goats, as a sin offering. All this was a burnt offering unto the Lord. Ezra 8:35. And of course the question arises, does it enter your mind to say all this was a burnt offering? Is it possible that a sin offering is a burnt offering? Rather say all this was like a burnt offering. Just as a burnt offering is not eaten, so too this particular sin offering is not eaten, as it is taught in the Baraisa that Rabbi Yehuda says it was an atonement for idolatry that they brought them. And Rav Yehuda says that Shmuel says it was an atonement for the idol worship that they practiced during the days of Tzidkiyahu, which was late end of the First Temple period. The Gemara clarifies, granted, according to Rabbi Yehuda, whose opinion is cited in the Mishnah, you find liability for these 12 sin offerings in a case where 12 tribes sinned by engaging in idolatry, as in that case they bring 12 goats. Alternatively, you find liability in a case where, and this is what we were talking about yesterday, that did the majority of the people sin, and how do we define that? Was it the majority of the population or a majority of the tribes? What was the nature of the erroneous or unwitting sin? As we've seen, not surprisingly, having spent a couple months studying Avodah Zarah, idolatry, the previous tractate, that the laws having anything to do with idolatry are very stringent. So even when there's an erroneous ruling, the outcome is going to be more stringent if it involved idolatry. And according to Rabbi Shimon as well, you find liability for these 12 sin offerings in the case where 11 tribes sinned, as in that case, they bring 11 goats, and the other goat is brought by the court that made this erroneous ruling. But according to Rabbi Meir, who says that the court brings an offering and the public does not, and only one bull is sacrificed, how do you find this a case of liability to bring 12 offerings? And the Gemara answers, it is in a case where they sinned and then sinned again, and then sinned again until they sinned 12 times. This is an alternative explanation to a number of tribes, rather one tribe that sinned over and over again. And the Gemara asks, but didn't those who sinned by engaging in idol worship during the time of Tzidkiyahu and the Babylonian exile already die? How can their descendants bring a sin offering on their behalf? The status of those animals is that of a sin offering whose owner has died, which is disqualified from sacrifice on the altar. And Rav Papa said, when it is learned as a tradition that the fate of a sin offering whose owners have died is to allow the animal to die without it being sacrificed, this matter applies specifically with regard to an individual who died, but not with regard to a congregation, because there is no death with regard to a congregation. The entity of the congregation remains even when specific members die. And the Gemara asks, from where does Rav Papa derive this? If we say that he derives it from that which is written, instead of your fathers shall be your sons, in Psalm 45 verse 17, indicating that as long as the sons are alive, it is as though the fathers are alive, then, if so, the same should be true even with regard to an individual as well. And sons should be able to sacrifice the sin offerings of their dead fathers. So rather, the inference of Rav Papa is from the goat of the new moon, the special offering brought at the beginning of each month, Chodesh. As the Merciful One states, bring these sin offerings from the collection of the temple treasury chamber, where the half shekels contributed by the Jewish people every Adar are stored. But haven't some of the Jewish people died since Adar, right? That's a month that contains Purim. If so, how can those who remain bring a sin offering if some of the owners of the offering have died? Rather, learn from it that a sin offering whose owners have died may be sacrificed in the case of a communal offering, because the community, the congregation, the group goes on. The Gemara asks, are these matters comparable in the case of the goat of the new moon? Perhaps no one from the public died in the interim. But here, in the case of those who returned to Zion from Babylonia, Those who engaged in idolatry in the days of Tzidkiyahu certainly died, as many years have passed since then, right? The Babylonian exile was approximately 70 years long. So rather, the reason for the opinion of Rav Papa is from here, as it is written in the confession recited by the sages during the rite of the heifer whose neck is broken, when you find a murder victim between towns in the land of Israel, and you measure to the closest town, and the elders of that town come and recite, this formula that we are not responsible for his death. Why would you make them swear that? It's a part of a ritual to expiate the blood guilt from the land, right? Because this person died, perhaps no one welcomed him in or escorted him on the way. At any rate, we don't know, we might not even know who he is, and we certainly don't know who killed him. And so there's this ritual of the heifer whose neck is broken. And it says about that, Deuteronomy 21:8, atone for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, O Lord. And this atonement is fit to atone even for those emerged from Egypt, from the fact that it is written, whom you have redeemed. And the reference is to those whom God redeemed from Egypt, even though they died long ago. And the Gemara asks, are these matters comparable? There, in the case of the heifer whose neck is broken, all the residents of the city on whose behalf the rite was performed are present when they perform the rite. And since it atones for the living, it also atones for the dead. But here, in the case of those returning from Zion, those returning to Zion, are there any of the people who worshipped idols during the time of Tzidkiyahu alive when the offering is sacrificed? And the Gemara answers, yes, it is indeed so that there were people from that period still alive. As it is written, many of the priests and Levites and the heads of the patrilineal houses, the elders that had seen the first house standing on its foundation, wept with a loud voice when this house was before their eyes, and many shouted aloud for joy. Ezra 3:12. After all, 70 years, why not? They were young and now they're old, but they saw the first temple and they saw the temple rebuilt in the days of the second temple, and they cried for joy. And the Gemara challenges, but perhaps those elders were few in number and were not many, and the majority of those present consisted of the people who were not alive during the days of Tzidkiyahu. And the Gemara answers, isn't it written, and the people could not discern the noise of the shout of joy from the noise of the weeping of the people, as the people shouted with a loud shout, and the noise was heard far off, in Ezra 3:13. And this indicates that the weeping elders who survived from the era of Tzidkiyahu outnumbered the younger people. And the Gemara asks, but didn't those who engaged in idol worship in the era of Tzidkiyahu do so intentionally? That's not an erroneous ruling. That's not an unwitting transgression. They did it intentionally. You don't bring a sin offering for that. So what's going on? Sin offerings are brought for unwitting, not intentional sins. And the Gemara answers, it was a provisional edict issued in exigent circumstances to enable them to sacrifice a sin offering to atone for an intentional sin, not a precedent to be followed later, but an exceptional case in history. And the Gemara comments, so too it is reasonable, as if you do not say so, then with regard to these 96 rams, 77 lambs, to what do they correspond? Rather, the sacrifice of those rams and lambs was a provisional edict, and here too, concerning sin offerings for intentional transgressions, it was a provisional edict, a one-off instance in history, accompanied by prophets who were guiding them. This is not something that we do. On a related note, the sages taught, if the court unwittingly issued a ruling and the congregation performed a transgression on the basis of that ruling, and before the offering was brought, one member of the public died, they are liable to bring an offering. If one member of the court died, they are exempt. And the Gemara asks, who is the Tana who stated this law? And Rav Chizda said that Rabbi Zera said that Rav Yirmiyah said that Rav said, it is Rabbi Meir, who says the court and not the public brings the offering. Therefore, if one member of the public died, the court is liable, as the entire court remains intact. If one member of the court died, the court is exempt, as the law here is like the law of a sin offering, that one of the partners who co-owns the offering died, and due to that reason, the court is exempt. As we've seen, the ruling of a court that is erroneous. This is Mishna number 2, right? No, actually it's Mishna. Sorry, I said at the beginning of the day that it's Mishna number 1. It's not. It's Mishnah number 5 that we are discussing here at the end of chapter 1. Sorry about that. But as we saw earlier, a ruling of the court has to be a ruling of all the members of the court, even if one disagreed and knew that they were making an erroneous ruling, but he nodded his head and went along with it, then that is the kind of ruling that could qualify for the special bull offering of a court that issued an erroneous ruling and the people relied on it and did something thinking it was permitted when in fact it was prohibited. Right? So that to bring that offering, when the court brings that offering, the members of that court have to be alive. And if even one of them has died, then they don't bring that special offering. Now, Rav Yosef objects to this. And let us establish this law in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Shimon, who says the court, together with the public, brings the offering. Therefore, if one member of the public died, the court is still liable, as the public does not die. Members of the public die. But if one member of the court died, the court is exempt in accordance with that which we say, that it is a sin offering belonging to partners. Abaye said to Rav Yosef, we heard with regard to Rabbi Shimon that he says, a sin offering belonging to partners is not left to die, meaning it is brought as an offering, as it is taught in a baraisa, in a case where a bull and a goat of Yom Kippur were lost, and one designated other animals in their place, and then the lost animals were found, they shall all be left to die. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. But Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say they shall graze until they develop a blemish due to the fact that a communal sin offering is not left to die. The bull sacrificed on Yom Kippur belongs to the priests and is therefore a sin offering belonging to partners. Nevertheless, Rabbi Shimon holds that its status is not that of a bull whose owners died. So Rav Yosef said to Abaye, priests, you say? Priests are different, as they are characterized as a congregation in and of themselves, as it is written, and for the priests and for all the people of the congregation he shall atone, in Leviticus 16:33. Right, the bull that's brought on Yom Kippur by the high priest is atoning for his household, and I suppose for his fellow priests. But what atones for the nation? The goats of Yom Kippur, right? One goat that's slaughtered in the temple and its blood is applied on the altar, and the other one that is the scapegoat, right? That's where we get this phrase, that is sent off into the wilderness for Azazel. 6b, we're on 6b now. And the Gemara challenges, if that is so, that the priests are characterized as a congregation, let them bring a bull as an unwitting communal offering if they perform a transgression on the basis of the ruling of the court. And if you would say indeed it is so, that is difficult, as the number of tribes has increased to 13. So rather, Rav Acha, the son of Rabbi Yaakov, said the tribe of Levi is not characterized as a congregation, as it is written, behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make of you a congregation of peoples, and I will give this land to your descendants after you for an everlasting possession. That's Genesis 48:4. It is derived from here that any tribe that has an ancestral possession bequeathed to it is characterized as a congregation, and any tribe that does not have an ancestral possession bequeathed to it is not characterized as a congregation. And the tribe of Levi, and I'm a Levi, has no ancestral land, and the priests who are from the tribe of Levi have no ancestral land. Right? The Levites didn't get a portion in the land; they got cities. They have a right to a tithe from the rest of Israel, but they did not get land because their portion is the Lord. The Gemara challenges, if so, the 12 tribes are lacking in number, as without the tribe of Levi, there are only 11. So Abaye said that it is stated, Ephraim and Menashe, the sons of Joseph, shall be like Reuben and Shimon to me in Genesis 48:5, right? Jacob said that, and he elevated his grandsons, Ephraim and Menashe, to be tribes like the other tribes who were founded by his sons, right? These are two grandsons that sort of rise to the level of his sons. And they are counted as 2 tribes, restoring the count of 12 tribes, even though the tribe of Levi, which is a tribe, but didn't receive land. So they're arguing about whether we consider Levi a congregation or not. Rabbah said, but isn't it written after the name of their brethren, shall they be called in their inheritance, indicating that it is with regard to inheritance that they are likened to tribes, but not with regard to another matter? And the Gemara challenges, and are they not considered independent tribes concerning other matters as well? but aren't they separate with regard to the banners under which the Jewish people traveled in the wilderness, in the encampment in the wilderness during the 40 years that we were there? The array of the tribes, right? In the middle, the tabernacle, surrounding it, the tribe of Levi, and then an array of the other 12 tribes, 3 in the north, 3 in the east, 3 in the south, and 3 in the west. 12 tribes. How do you have 12? Because Ephraim and Manasseh were counted as tribes in themselves, not the single tribe of Joseph. The Gemara answers, in accordance with the division of the tribes according to their inheritances, so was the division of the tribes in their encampment around the tabernacle. This was in order to honor the banners, so that there would be 3 tribes affiliated with each banner in the north, south, east, west. So the Gemara asks, but aren't they separate with regard to the matter of princes of the tribes, as the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh had separate princes, leaders? And the Gemara answers, that was in order to honor the princes. And there is no proof that they are 2 different tribes with regard to other matters. And this is as it is taught in Baraisa. Solomon, King Solomon, set 7 days of dedication of the Holy Temple. And what did Moses see that led him to set 12 days of dedication for the tabernacle? He did so in order to honor the tribal princes, so that the prince of each tribe would bring his offering on his own day. Due to the honor each prince deserved, Ephraim and Manasseh are considered 2 tribes. And the Gemara asks, well, what conclusion was reached about Rabbi Shimon's opinion? Does he hold that a sin offering brought by several partners is different from a communal offering, as Rav Yosef explained, or does he hold that there is no difference between them, as Abaye explained? And the Gemara suggests, coming here a proof as it is taught in a Baraisa, that Rabbi Shimon says there are 5 sin offerings that are left to die, as they may not be sacrificed. The offspring of a sin offering born after its mother was consecrated as a sin offering. The substitute of a sin offering, which assumes sacred status but may not be sacrificed. A sin offering whose owners have died. A sin offering whose owner's sin was atoned for by another offering. And a sin offering whose first year has passed, as a sin offering may be brought only within the animal's first year. And you cannot state a case of the offspring of a communal sin offering, as the congregation does not designate a female as a sin offering, and you cannot state a case of a substitute of a communal sin offering, as there is no substitute for a communal offering, and you cannot state a case of a sin offering whose owners have died in the case of a communal sin offering, as the public does not die. With regard to a sin offering whose owner's sin was atoned for and the sin offering whose first year has passed. So let me read that again. With regard to a sin offering whose owner's sin was atoned for, and a sin offering whose first year has passed, we did not hear whether the law applies to communal sin offerings as well. One might have thought that they too shall be left to die. You say one shall derive the vague from the explicit. What did we find with regard to the offspring of a sin offering, the substitute of a sin offering, and a sin offering whose owners died? We found that these matters are stated only with regard to an individual sin offering, but with regard to a communal sin offering, but not with regard to a communal sin offering. And so too, these matters of a sin offering whose owner's sin was atoned for, and a sin offering whose first year has passed, are stated only with regard to an individual sin offering, but not with regard to a communal sin offering. And likewise, one may derive that an individual sin offering must be left to die, while a sin offering owned by partners is not left to die. And the Gemara asks, and does one derive the law of the possible from the impossible? Some of these cases are by their very nature not relevant to communal sin offerings. One cannot derive the law from them with regard to cases that would be relevant to communal sin offerings. And the Gemara answers, Rabbi Shimon learns all these laws of sin offerings that are left to die as a tradition in one place, i.e. a single halacha, in cases where not all the categories of sin offerings left to die apply, no category of sin offerings that are left to die applies. And that concludes our discussion of Mishnah number 5, and with it, chapter 1. We definitely got into the weeds there on what we do with communal offerings brought when the congregation relies on an erroneous ruling, And then, is it one tribe is bringing? Are all the tribes bringing? If one tribe sinned, do the other tribes have to bring an offering? That's really the questions that pertain to the erroneous ruling. But once we were talking about communal offerings, then we had to discuss what happens if can a communal offering be brought, if 70 years have passed and most of the people that committed the original sin are gone. And that's how we got to this replacement, and sin offerings whose owners have died. How do we extend that to the communal offering? We move on. That was chapter 1. Now we move on to chapter 2. The relevant verses here, Leviticus 4:3. If the anointed priest shall sin so as to bring guilt upon the people, then let him offer for his sin that he has sinned a young bull without blemish unto the Lord for a sin offering. Leviticus 4, verse 22. When a king sins, and he unwittingly performs one of all the commandments of the Lord, his God, that are not to be performed, and he is guilty, if his sin that he has sinned be known to him, he shall bring for his offering a goat, a male without blemish. So there's a case of the high priest made a mistake, and now the king made a mistake, right? They unwittingly committed a transgression. What offering do they bring? First the high priest, then the king. Now, and if any one of the common people shall sin through error in doing any of the things that the Lord has commanded not to be done and is guilty, if his sin that he has sinned be known to him, right? He realizes that he committed an unwitting sin, then he shall bring for his offering a goat, a female without blemish for his sin which he has sinned. That's the chatas, the standard sin offering for an unwitting sin. And if one soul sin through error, then he shall offer a female goat of the first year for a sin offering. Sounds like the same ruling as in Leviticus 4:27, but this one is in Numbers 15:27. Okay, let's move in. Mishnah number 1. I'm actually almost done. We're on page 6b, but opening chapter 2. If you have questions or comments, please get them in now. Mishnah 1 of chapter 2. In a case. Sorry, Google Sheets making me sign in so that I can receive the questions from Nina. Okay, Mishnah 1, in a case where an anointed priest, i.e. the high priest, issued an erroneous ruling for himself, permitting performance of an action prohibited by Torah law. So interesting, right? Because he's the high priest, he doesn't just do or not do things, right? He's the high priest. So if he says that something is permitted to him when in fact it is not, I don't know if he spoke aloud that this is my ruling and then did it, changing the law that was before, or if he just made a mistake and did it. We'll get into it. But because of his position, it's not just a person committing an action, right? There's a difference. I think we all know that instinctively. Stop this. No, I don't want to do this. Leave me alone. Okay. We all know instinctively that there is a difference when prominent people, especially lawmakers and lawgivers, when they violate the law, it is a different type of matter than when a normal person does. Okay. In a case where an anointed priest, meaning the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, issued an erroneous ruling for himself, permitting performance of an action prohibited by Torah law, if he issued the ruling unwittingly, and then unwittingly performed the transgression in accordance with his ruling, he is liable to bring a bull as a sin offering for an unwitting transgression by the anointed priest. If he issued the ruling unwittingly and performed the transgression intentionally, or if he issued the ruling intentionally and performed the transgression unwittingly, he is exempt from liability to bring any offering, as there is a principle. The legal status of the ruling of an anointed priest for himself is like that of the ruling of the court for the general public. Therefore, the high priest is liable to bring the bull as a sin offering for his unwitting transgression in a case when the court would be liable to bring the bull as a communal sin offering for an unwitting transgression performed by the general public. And there's a lot of logic to this, because we're talking about the high priest. First of all, we pray that the Kohen, who's elevated to be the high priest, should be a sage in his own right, should really know the law thoroughly, And there are many mitzvahs, many commandments that apply only to the high priest, right? No other person can perform those. So he's acting as both a sage, issuing a ruling on what the high priest shall and shall not do, and as the high priest himself doing it, right? And we're separating those two things. There's the ruling that he issues and the action that he takes. Okay, that's the Mishnah, the Gemara. The Mishnah teaches, if he issued the ruling unwittingly, and then unwittingly performed the transgression in accordance with his ruling, he is liable to bring a bull. The Gemara asks, isn't this obvious? This is certainly a case of an unwitting transgression for which the Torah deems him liable to bring an offering. Abaye said, what are we dealing with here? We are dealing with a case where he issued an erroneous ruling and he forgot the reason that was the basis upon which he issued the ruling. And at the moment that he erred and performed the transgression, he said, I'm hereby performing this action with my ruling in mind. As, lest you say, since if the reason that was the basis upon which he issued the ruling became known to him at that moment, perhaps he would have retracted his ruling. Therefore, if he nevertheless performed his transgression, his status is like that of an intentional transgressor, and let him not be liable to bring an offering. And to counter this, the Tana teaches us this too is a case of an unwitting transgression. We'll stop there. That's very interesting, right? He issued a ruling. The ruling was wrong. Later came time to perform the action that was the subject of that ruling, and he didn't remember what his reasoning was for reaching that ruling, which in fact was erroneous. And he said, well, I'm going to go with it anyway, right? Because I made this ruling before. But he can't remember what his logic was. I mean, happens all the time, right? In your home, you organize something a certain way, you make a decision, you send an email, you move some business relationship forward on the basis of something that was going on. And when it comes time to, take up that conversation again, months later, you don't even remember how you got to that place. And you say, well, this is what I said at the end of our correspondence. I'll just go with that. Maybe it would be a good idea to review the chain of causation that got you there, because now you have greater wisdom, some time has passed, maybe things have changed, maybe you have more information available, and you won't make exactly the same decision that you made at the end. Always good to review how we got here, wherever here is. Bill. So we can learn out from this that in corporate entities, that is any formalized group, are legally immortal. That is to say that specific actions must be taken to dissolve said entities rather than them being considered to have ceased to exist with, for example, the cessation of all function. Case study, does the bridge club continue to exist if it no longer meets? I mean, it's a great question, Bill, because I think in the examples that we're talking about, the congregation still existed, right? That was the point, that the communal offering is like an offering owned by partners. And then if one partner dies, we would just leave that offering to die. It can't be brought anymore. But if it's a communal offering, we say, well, the community still exists. What if the community didn't exist? Well, Israel will never cease to exist. The nation of Israel, the people of Israel. Why do I say that? Because God said so, right? He will always be with us. So if we're talking about a particular group that did cease to exist, I think that you'd have to take that into account, right? That's factual evidence that the group does not exist anymore. And so, but I think the counter argument would be, well, are we sure? But didn't we say that the public that existed at the time of the sins of Tzidkiyahu and the idolatry that went on there, all of them are gone? Right, but the nation still exists, the congregation still exists. And so I think we have to be careful what we learn out on this idea of groups always survive unless they're formally dissolved. Because if actually all the members of the group are gone, I don't think we're going to say that group lives on. The memory of the group might live on, right? But the group itself doesn't. And I think, as we've seen, in a lot of cases, are we going to extend one area, a ruling in one area of the law to another, just because we have extended an element from this law to that law, doesn't mean that we can extend all elements of this law to that law. Because the situation, the circumstances, the conditions, the practicality, even the common sense nature of it might resist further extension of elements from one area to another. And finally, Ilanit, the statement that the community cannot die was clarifying in this matter and made my mind on this sad day jump to Am Yisrael Chai. Exactly what I was thinking, Ilanit. Exactly what I was thinking. And I think I just said it. That's what I've got for us today, and with God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow. Recall, complicated schedule this week. We'll put it on the Facebook page. But tomorrow, Tuesday, regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific. Wednesday, very special time, 11 a.m. Pacific, 1 hour earlier even than the noon class. And then Thursday and Friday, noon Pacific. That's the schedule for this week. That's what I've got. All the best. Take care. If you haven't seen Guns N' Moses yet, go see it. It's in a city near you. And please tell everyone you know by text and email, go see this movie while it's in theaters between now and Thursday.